put my readers on, you know we're ready to go. Hello everybody, and welcome to this evening's All Candidates meeting, which is being sponsored and presented by the Napanee District Chamber of Commerce. I'm Rebecca Wilkinson, General Manager of 88.7 My FM here in Napanee, and I've been invited to moderate tonight's meeting, which is being streamed live on the Chamber's Facebook page and on the 88.7 My FM Facebook page, so we welcome everyone watching in from home. Cogeco Cable's Your TV is also here, and they will be airing this event on Thursday, this Thursday, September 9th, twice, 12:30 in the afternoon and 7:30 in the evening. You'll find Your TV on Cogeco Cable, Napanee, channels 13 and 700. The event will also be available on the Chamber's YouTube channel after tonight as well. We have received confirmation and guidance from KFL&A Public Health to hold this event, and so of course we do have to follow their guidelines. So we ask those of you in attendance to please not move any of the chairs now that we're all settled, as they've been positioned the way they are for COVID-specific reasons. Masks are required at all times with the exception of myself and the candidates when speaking. If you decide to leave the building for any reason between now and the conclusion of the event around 9 p.m., please understand that you will not be permitted back into the building. We have 6 candidates vying to be our next MP for Hastings, Lennox and Addington in this election. All were invited to take part in tonight's event. Matilda Debuse of the New Democratic Party was unable to attend, but a representative will speak on her behalf during the candidates' introductions only. After the introduction, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to tell you about themselves and their platforms. Following the introductions, I will ask a series of questions, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Our timekeeper, Megan Sands from the Napanee District Chamber of Commerce, will signal each candidate using a green paddle 15 seconds before their time is up. That's the red paddle I'm looking at right now, but oh, you show, okay, green paddle, thank you. When she raises the red paddle, it will signal that time is up, and we'll move on to the next candidate. Thank you, Megan. Tonight's sponsor, the Napanee District Chamber of Commerce, has submitted 2 questions on behalf of the business community. Members of the public were invited to submit questions in advance of the meeting, and as moderator, I reviewed those questions along with Megan from the Chamber, and together we chose the remaining questions from all those submitted. In the interest of time, I would ask those in attendance to please refrain from applauding or commenting until the conclusion of the event, and at its conclusion, of course, please leave in a very quick and orderly manner. And now I'll invite each of the candidates to introduce themselves. Candidates, this is your chance to explain to voters what you consider to be the most important issues in the campaign and why you deserve their vote. Please pay attention to the timekeeper and stay within your time limit for each question. Again, Megan is right here down in the front. We'll start the introductions in alphabetical order, so I will ask James Babcock with the People's Party of Canada to begin. James, you have 3 minutes for your introduction. Yes, you can remove your mask for that. Please go ahead whenever you're ready. You'll have to turn the mic on, James, I think, if it's not on already. Yeah, just on the side. Thank you. Sorry to throw that at you. And get nice and close to the mic.
Can you hear me? Yeah? Great. Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is James Babcock, and I'm the candidate for the People's Party of Canada. So there's a few things I would like to talk to you about tonight. The first and most important one is freedom. Canadians value freedom. It's right in our national anthem. True north, strong and free. And when governments start taking away these freedoms, I, like some of you, get a little upset. It started with Bill C-10 and internet censorship. Next came the OIC gun ban. Now with the pandemic, we've seen lockdowns, stay-at-home orders, dictate saying which businesses can stay open, and now mandated vaccines and vaccine passports. This is not okay. If you want to get the vaccine, great. If you don't want to get the vaccine, then also great. That's what freedom is, the freedom to make the choice for yourself. These vaccine passports are also horrendous. It's the beginning of segregation all over again. This is not okay. It doesn't make sense. Just because you aren't vaccinated, it doesn't mean that you're sick or contagious. It does mean that there's a higher chance that you might have a worse outcome if you catch COVID. But that's not even a guarantee. We have had non-vaccinated, asymptomatic cases right from the beginning. It's also mind-boggling that an unvaccinated person can shop at a grocery store safely, but not in another store that now is mandated to require a vaccine passport. It sounds like discrimination based on a health status to me. All of the other shocking to me that there's only one party fighting for freedom in Canada, when the rest are pushing authoritarian agendas. This is why I'm standing up here today to fight for our freedoms.
Thank you, James. And now Mike Bossio from the Liberal Party of Canada.
In 2019, no party campaigned on how they would handle a pandemic, let alone lead us out of one. So it is up to Canadians to vote to decide which party they want to lead them out of this pandemic. And we have a plan to do just that. A plan that will continue to finish the fight against COVID, that will support our local businesses, especially those hardest hit, that will meet our climate targets, and will make life more affordable for Canadians. On vaccines, we beat our September deadline of making sure that we had enough vaccines for all Canadians. We are now one of the most vaccinated countries in the world, and we are now calling for mandatory vaccines for those who travel and for federal workers to finish the fight against COVID. On COVID, we provided businesses and families with the emergency supports they needed to get through the pandemic, and will continue to support those businesses, especially the hardest hit ones. On making life more affordable, our Canada Child Benefit, tax-free Canada Child Benefit, has lifted over 400,000 children out of poverty. Our $10 a day child care plan will save families thousands, and our comprehensive housing plan will make it easier to buy a first home and ease housing prices. We need a government that is going to take COVID seriously to finish the fight against COVID. A government that will make life more affordable for Canadians, a plan that will transition Canada to be a clean growth industry leader, and an MP that will ensure that opportunities and investments are coming to our communities so that our residents can benefit in their day-to-day lives. Anyone who knows me knows that I've been a hard-working, straight-talking MP that got a lot of stuff done. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're an individual, a business, or a corporation, or a municipality. If you had a problem and you called, I answered that call and made sure that was going to happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Next, representing Matilda Debuse from the New Democratic Party, we have Kathy Hutchin here to speak on her behalf for the introduction.
This is intimidating when you're short. Okay, is that okay? Okay. Tonight I'm reading a statement from Matilda Debuse, the New Democratic Party candidate in Hastings, Lennox and Addington for this election campaign. These words come directly from Matilda. They're not written by me or any other party hack. They're not from a can. I'm very sorry I cannot be with you tonight. On September 20th, you get the chance to cast your ballot and have your voice heard. When voting, consider what you and your community need from your candidate and your government. Think about who is going to benefit you moving forward. Think about who is not going to let you down. An NDP government will help small and medium businesses by making sure there are patrons to actually buy goods and services. You can't expect a small business to thrive if they have no customers. The New Democratic Economic Recovery Plan revolves around helping get people back on their feet and putting money into their pockets. We have a child care plan that will help women get back to work. We have a pharmacare and dental care plan that will ease costs for Canadians. We need to revitalize communities in order to support small businesses. Right now, rural communities need to be connected physically and virtually. An NDP government will bring back canceled bus routes that connected rural locations to bigger cities. This will bring tourism and business back to rural economies. It will allow young people to stay and return to their hometowns instead of moving away and never coming back. These bus routes will also allow people to go to medical appointments and visit friends and families with more ease. An NDP government will also declare high-speed internet as an essential service and work to make sure every Canadian has access to affordable and reliable internet within the next 4 years. In a time where more things are virtual, we need to have telecom services that are affordable and work for everyone. September 20th,
Thank you,
still have a
Kathy.
voice, no matter who wins.
Thank you, Kathy. And now from the Conservative Party, Shelby Cramp-Nyman.
Good evening, everyone. As introduced, thank you. My name is Shelby Cramp-Nyman, and I'm your federal Conservative candidate for Hastings, Lennox, and Addington. I'd like to start by thanking the Napanee District Chamber of Commerce for giving the candidates an opportunity to speak here this evening to everyone. Thank you for all of you that could attend in person, for all of you that are watching by Zoom, to my fellow candidates, thank you. We must always remember that the Chamber of Commerce works to benefit its members through its advocacy, membership, and community. I am a strong believer that an investment in our local Chamber of Commerce is an investment in the future of our businesses and our communities. If we are going to be successful moving out of this pandemic, HLNA needs a plan for our future, not a lot of empty promises that may or may not be kept by our current government. In order to create conditions for success, governments must provide the necessary investments in infrastructure, give relief from taxes that stifle productivity, and cut red tape that inhibits growth. This includes investing in municipal and regional infrastructure, mental health programs, and cleaner energy. It also means supporting our farmers and our local agri-food sector. It means creating the conditions that help businesses develop and prosper while creating an environment for new opportunities and investment. Conservatives have a plan just to do that. And it starts with taking specific steps that finally help rural Ontario, rural Canada. The Conservative Party of Canada will vow to connect all of Canada, including all rural areas, to high-speed internet by 2025. Set aside a portion of federal infrastructure funds.
Thank you, Shelby.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Sloan, Independent.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me, and I also want to thank the other candidates for being here so you guys could get to know all of us. So in terms of a formal introduction, I don't really have one, but what I could do is just tell you who I am. So I have lived here for 4 years, and my husband's Derek so he is the incumbent MP, I guess up until the 19th of this month. And he was an independent since January. And he got a lot of talking time in the House of Commons. So when he was in the Conservative Party for maybe a year and a half, he got to talk maybe 2 or 3 times in the House of Commons. But when he became an independent, he was able to talk maybe 50 times. We were constantly on our way as a family over to Ottawa with our kids for him to speak about the issues that you guys hold close to your hearts. I'm a nurse practitioner by trade, so it's very difficult for me to transition into something like this. But for the last 11 years, I definitely have the skill set in order to talk to you guys and find out what you want. The last couple of weeks, I've been talking to thousands of people, and I'll tell you what their concerns are. They don't like that they're losing their jobs if they don't get the vaccine. I think that's wrong, and I don't think we should be allowing this in our country. I'm very strongly against the segregation of it. I think that we can use a lot of additional measures in order to take care of the COVID issue. I think that we need to listen to experts on all sides and come up with some smart ideas of how to deal with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Reg Wilson, Green Party of Canada, and I'm being told that candidates please go very, very close to the mic. Almost, yeah. Get nice and comfortable with that microphone.
How's this for a test?
Think that sounds good. Can you hear them at the back okay? Okay, yes. They
Okay,
have that.
my name is Reg Wilson. I've watched a few people try to say what they want to say in 3 minutes. I'll never get through what I have to say in 3 minutes, so I'm going to try and hit the highlights. I want to say, first of all, I don't think this is an election like our grandfathers had. We are no longer talking about politics as we traditionally do, because I think there's an elephant in the room that's getting completely lost in what we're going to do about this and what we're going to do about that, and this promise and that promise. And that elephant is one of the reasons why I'm here. I'm a 75-year-old man. I retired from small business. I love small business. I can tell you all kinds of great stories about how strong and effective small business is, so I applaud the focus of the Chamber of Commerce to talk about that. But the elephant in the room is COVID, or not COVID, it's the climate change. The International Panel on Climate Control has come out and said effectively that we are on the red alert zone for the climate and it's going to impact humanity. And if we're going to avoid that, between now and 2030, we have to reduce our carbon emissions by 60%. Now I'm 75 years of age, I'm not going to have a career in politics, so you got to ask, why am I here? And I'm here because I have a whole bunch of children and grandchildren. And this election isn't about the people in this room. This election is for the future of the people that aren't here. The little kids that are going to bed right now with their babysitters, everybody under 20 who can't vote, this election is about them. And we are the responsible adults in the room, and we need to deal with that issue. Now, every party has got a bit of a climate plan. I can't vote for conservatives. I have voted conservative and liberal many, many times in the 55 years I've been voting, but I can no longer do either. I can't vote conservative because their commitment is 30% of emissions, not 60, which is half of what we need to do. And liberals have a target that's higher than that, but sadly, the liberal track record is considerably slower. Got you? And so I can't have faith in there to keep the promise. The Green Party has committed to 60%, and I'll tell you more at some particular point in time. My hope, before the evening is out, is how we're going to get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. And now we'll begin our round of questioning, and we'll rotate based on the introductory starting order. So I'll ask the question, and then we will go to Mike Bossio for our first answer. So here's your question, candidates. Small and medium-sized businesses are the backbone of our economy, and they've taken a huge hit since the start of the pandemic. Rural towns and villages are suffering, and we've seen many small businesses close. What are the steps your party will take to ensure that our small businesses here in Hastings, Lennox and Addington are able to bounce back, thrive, and flourish from this point on? Mike Bossio, Liberal Party.
Thank you for that question. And any of you know me, once again, as an MP, know that I interacted a lot with businesses and organizations in the riding to help them develop their ideas, implement their ideas, and to find opportunities for them to expand their businesses. If you came to me with a problem, I didn't rest until I found a solution to that problem. And our government, all through COVID, has been there for small businesses throughout this very, very difficult, challenging time. The financial supports that we've had for businesses and for individuals is what's kept our economy going. And I do an awful lot of driving around this riding. As many know, I knock on a lot of doors, and I try to stay as connected as I can to both individuals and businesses. And it's wonderful to see that there are still so many businesses that still have their doors open after such an incredibly difficult time that we've gone through in the last year and a half. Our government has been there before the pandemic for business, has been there during the pandemic, and we will be there after the pandemic is over. As an MP, I will continue to fight on behalf of the businesses in this riding. I will continue to bring economic development dollars to our community through our Community Futures Development Corporations. Our government brought $1.115 billion to Southern Ontario through the CFDC program, and that led to an awful lot of investments in this riding to help those businesses to grow, to thrive, and to prosper, and to hire more employees. One of the biggest problems that our businesses have today, though, is in skilled labor. So our government's investing $7 billion to train and retrain 500,000 Canadians to ensure that we have the labor force in place that can keep our businesses growing and thriving, because that's what they need moving forward. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Mike. And candidates, I won't read the question again before each of you comes up, but if anyone needs the question asked again, please just let me know. Shelby Cramp-Nyman next, please.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I was raised in small business, so this certainly hits home to me. I think that we need to invest in targeted stimulus measures such as infrastructure ASAP in order to create jobs. I'm proud to suggest that the Conservative Party is launching the Main Street Business Loan to provide loans up to $200,000. The $60,000 Canadian Emergency Business Account loan is too small for thousands of small and medium-sized businesses. Canada's Conservatives will immediately offer a loan on similar terms, but offering up to 4 months of pre-pandemic revenue, up to a maximum of $200,000. We will forgive up to 25% depending on the company's revenue loss. There's several different steps included in this. Small business is the heart, it's the backbone of small communities like Napanee here in Hastings, Lennox and Addington, and the Conservative Party, and I'm very proud to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby. Jennifer Sloan. I should say please, Jennifer Sloan, independent. Certainly, yep. Small and medium-sized businesses are the backbone of our economy, and they've taken a huge hit since the start of the pandemic. Rural towns and villages are suffering, and we've seen many small businesses close. What are the steps your party will take to ensure that our small businesses in Hastings, Lennox and Addington are able to bounce back, thrive and flourish from this point on?
From talking with constituents that own small businesses or medium-sized businesses, I really just talked to the ones that had small businesses. They would not survive another lockdown. They're already operating on a skeleton staff. They can't retain any employees. If they have restaurants, stock will just go rotten and they have to throw it out, and that's a large part of their income that's lost. We can't go into another lockdown. This will be impossible for our businesses to snap back. I can't promise that we're giving millions of dollars to businesses, but what I will fight is for their right to stay open, to fight for themselves. They want to work. They want to work. And it doesn't make sense to them why the small businesses have to be shut down where the big ones remain open, where they are following the protocols and they're able to follow them better than the big box retailers. This is something that we need to look into again, because it's not fair to these businesses. Our communities have been built on the backs of these small businesses, and for us to turn our back on it is detrimental. And I don't think people understand that when they're all gone, do you think the Walmarts and the other big stores are going to keep their prices low? It's going to be a ghost town here. We can't survive with another lockdown. We have to look at other measures. Thank you.
Jennifer. Reg Wilson, Green Party. 2 minutes.
Well, I was going to tell you a little bit of a small business story. I worked for a company when I retired, had about 40 employees, and it started from a company that had 2. And this is why I'm going to share this story with you, because it's a part of the answer, I believe. It was started by a man who had the idea that he was going to sell UV disinfection systems for homes, and he had a light bulb, an ultraviolet light bulb in a box that was the size of a shoebox. He was a Dutch-Canadian fellow, and he met at the airport of another Dutch-Canadian engineer who wanted to emigrate to Canada. The two of them looked at it and said, hey, we could do stuff with this for wastewater as well as clean water, and that evolved into Trojan Technologies, which evolved into 300 and some odd employees, and the company that became an offshoot of that, I became the general manager for it. So when I start to talk about the commitment of the Green Party to improving technology and research, that's a very, very important part for small businesses. But let me speak to the ones that are here now. The Green Party has committed to maintain the wage subsidy and rental subsidy programs that are in place. They have committed to establishing a fund of money for small businesses and viable businesses that want to invest in green technology. And green technology, to the topic of the Chamber of Commerce, is what does it take to grow? Green technology is key to the economy for the 21st economy, because that's what we're going to, not the old one. So the Green Party is committed to increasing R&D funding by 50%, and they've also taken measures to make sure that the intellectual capital that our small businesses and universities develop, that intellectual property stays Canadian, because up till now, about 20 years ago, 30-some-odd% of the companies that were invented with intellectual property in Canada, when they got to the United States, they still had Canadian ownership. Now it's less than 17%. So we need to find ways to develop the technology to solve the problems and keep it manufactured in Canada, as well as support the businesses that are here now. Thank you.
Thank you, Reg. Now, James Babcock, People's Party, please, James. Remember to get nice and close to that microphone. Thanks,
Yeah.
James.
So I'm going to echo Jennifer a little bit here. No more lockdowns. Small business, they've been hurt the most by lockdowns. I know there's been wage subsidies and all sorts of other things in place, but when you take away their ability to actually stay open and turn profit, it's not good. And we've seen a lot of empty stores, no matter which city you go in. So not having another lockdown is key to helping small business and medium-sized business. Another thing the People's Party believes is a fair thing to do is we have to stop subsidizing these multi-billion-dollar businesses. It's not fair for the little guy starting out when a multi-billion-dollar business gets handed hundreds of millions of dollars from taxpayers, because that's essentially pure profit. So when the small business is trying to get bigger and grow and compete, they can't, because they've got hundreds of billions of dollars of profit in these big businesses that's just been handed to them. So that's not fair. So at the People's Party, we plan on stopping corporate handouts for the big business so that it's a fair playing field across the board and no more lockdowns. Because again, that's not fair when some businesses can stay open and others can't. And a lot of the small businesses have been in the category that can't. Thanks.
Thank you, James. We'll move on to our next question. Current legislation protects a woman's right to reproductive freedom and the LGBT+ community's right to marriage equality. If you are elected, what will you do to ensure those rights and freedoms continue, and what work do you feel still needs to be done in those areas? And we'll start with Conservative candidate Shelby Crampniman.
Ladies and gentlemen, if elected to be your member of parliament, I will represent everyone in my riding, regardless of ethnicity, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. When it comes to abortion, I feel that politicians should not get involved in personal decisions. Women should have that choice to do what they feel is best for their beliefs and their particular circumstances. I will stand up for women to have a choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby. Jennifer Sloan, Independent, please.
This is an issue that a lot of people are interested in. I'll be upfront with my views. I'm pro-life, and I'm not sorry about that. I value life at all age, in the womb and outside of the womb. I would do whatever I can to preserve life. In terms of the LGBTQ community, as a nurse practitioner, I always treated everyone with the utmost respect. I do not discriminate. If somebody came into my office and they were human, I treated them. And when I walk around the community, I don't see anything other than a person that lives here that has concerns and wants to be happy. And that's all I care about. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And now to Reg Wilson, Green Party of Canada.
My apologies to the other people up here. I keep forgetting to put my mask back on, so make a better practice of that. If anybody takes an opportunity to look at the Green Party's platform, it's on the internet, greenparty.ca, you'll see that this party is very, very focused on the rights of gays and lesbians and transsexuals and whatever. It's a significant piece of what drives the organization. And I personally have absolutely no problem with that. I think those people are God's creation, just like all of us. And I think they deserve our respect as a Canadian citizen. As far as the right to abortion, I think women are pretty smart and pretty responsible and will make the appropriate decision that's good for them and for their unborn child, if that's the case. And I strongly support the rights for abortion. Thank you.
Thank you, Reg. And now James Babcock, People's Party, please.
Could you reread the question?
Sure. Current legislation protects a woman's right to reproductive freedom and the LGBT plus community's right to marriage equality. If you are elected, what will you do to ensure those rights and freedoms continue? And what work do you feel still needs to be done in those areas?
Okay. So as far as the pro-life, pro-choice debate, I guess I fall on the pro-choice side of things. Again, it's back to the freedom. So there are some reasons I think that are pretty valid for getting an abortion. And there's some reasons that people, well, there's a lot of reasons why people would want to keep their child. So you should have the choice to do what you feel is best. As far as the rights for gay, lesbian, trans, all that stuff, we're all Canadians. So we should have the same rights across the board. No one should be discriminated against, and that's back to the fairness and respect principles of the PPC. So, to me, it's just common sense. Treat others how you would like to be treated. So, just be good. Be nice to people. Not that hard.
Thanks, James. Mike Bossio, Liberal Party of Canada, please.
So I definitely believe in a woman's right to choose. That is between an individual and God. That is their choice. And I very strongly stand behind that. I also, of course, very strongly believe in LGBTQ rights. You know, our government was the government that established the LGBTQ Secretariat that is making a significant difference in the lives of all LGBTQ citizens in this country. It's about basic human rights, and I think we need to respect every Canadian equally and their right to make those choices. Love is love. As far as you know, a woman's right to choose, it also is vitally important that we ensure that we give all opportunities that can be available to women. You know, the Canada Child Benefit, the $10 a day child care plan, the Women's Entrepreneurship Plan. I mean, these are all opportunities for women to participate equally in our society, in our labor force, and in our economy. And that's what's vitally important moving forward. And the same thing with LGBTQ citizens. We've set up funds to be able to ensure that they have equal opportunity in our society, in our labor force, and in our economy. And at the end of the day, that's diversity is what makes us a great country. It's what's created such an amazing dynamic that exists here that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. And we've got this massive country with a tiny little population, and very early on we figured out that we need to work together if we're going to survive as a country. And nothing has changed. Today we are still a massive country with a tiny little population. We need to make sure that every member of that population has an equal right to be able to actively participate in our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Now we'll move on to our next question. Before entering politics, how were you working to make a difference or bring about positive change in Hastings, Lennox and Addington? And we'll start with Jennifer Sloan, Independent.
as I mentioned, I've lived here for 4 years, and I'm a nurse practitioner by trade. When we moved here 4 years ago, I couldn't find work here, so I had to drive to Oshawa. So it was a 4-hour round trip that I did for 2 years. When Derek got elected as a member of parliament, it was that day that I finished working in Oshawa. So I decided to stay at home and homeschool our kids and support my husband. I have the ability to work independently as a nurse practitioner. So I took on a small clientele of patients that I wanted to help with their health. A lot of people don't have family doctors and they can't get one. I personally am on a wait list for the last 4 years to get one here. So at least I can kind of take care of myself, so I think I'm okay. But I think that's a real need for the community, and that's something that when I tell people what I do for a living, then that's one of the first things they talk about, that they don't have that here. So in terms of making a difference in the community, I'm trying to raise up good kids, trying to support my husband, taking care of a few patients to make their life happier and healthier, supporting local businesses, meeting and greeting people, talking to people over the phone that are suffering from depression, from the lockdowns, and that's all I can say. I'm doing my best, but I think I've made a difference with that. Thank you.
Reg Wilson, Green Party. And please do turn off your cell phones if you don't have them turned off already. Thank you.
Well, I can't say that I've done an awful lot of work on a voluntary basis in Hastings, Lennox and Addington, because I only moved here about 3.5 years ago, but I have been an active part of the Tamworth-Aaronsville Community Development Committee. And prior to that, in my early days, because I am old, somewhere around 35, I was a farmer, and we needed to make some changes, and I organized a province-wide group called the Cream Action Committee and lobbied across the entire province and all the various annual meetings, and over a period of 3 years we managed to get enough momentum to convince the Milk Marketing Board and the province of Ontario to change the Milk Act to allow cream producers to switch their quota from cream to milk and make it viable, because what we were doing at the time was shipping buttered and fat pigs to a market that really wasn't looking for fat. So that was an effort I did for nothing other than my own personal satisfaction and the opportunity to be a little bit more economically strong and raise my family. And then about 1988, I decided I had to put my resume into a few jobs. There was a recession on, and I was at the bottom of the list because there was always like 150 people in the resume file. So I decided to get my MBA, and I went back to school and got an MBA through the Ivy School of Business in London. In the process of that, I met a woman who was serving on a board for children's mental health, and she persuaded me to take a part in that, which I did. I found it very rewarding and a very, very traumatic thing to be a part of in terms of the stories we went through, but I served on that board. I became the president of the board and negotiated the purchase at a small profit to make sure that we had a sufficient scale that the government would not be tempted to cut us down. So I'm very proud of that. I think children's mental health is a tremendous issue, and it really brings prosperity to the community if you can find a way to resolve that. Anyway, thank you very much.
James Babcock, People's Party, please.
Okay, so I guess my most one of my recent things that I've done is I was on the Renewable Energy Vibrancy Fund Advisory Committee. What a mouthful that is, eh? But so this committee was designed to help make a policy as to what we do with the money that comes in from the solar and wind farms. The wind farms are located on Amherst Island, and the solar farms are in Odessa, Westbrook area. So that was all volunteer. There was 3 of us main members and a council member, and we talked about a lot of different aspects of how this money could be used, and worked on designing a policy that we thought was the best and fairest across the board. So that's one thing that I've done recently, and then I guess I've got a lifetime's worth of helping people in the community. I'm an electrician by trade. My father's also an electrician, and as I'm sure many of you know, if you're handy at all, you get all kinds of calls, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes on a Sunday afternoon. Either somebody's got an issue with their power situation or their well. So I've done a lot of calls like that. My dad and I, we joke about it. We say those are the go-to-heaven jobs because they never pay. So that's hopefully buying my way into heaven, I guess. But so I'm always helping out, even on the campaign trail. Busy as I am, my friend, she needed help putting a table together, so I put a table together last weekend. So didn't really have time for it, but again, it was the right thing to do. Thanks.
Thank you, James. Mike Bossio?
So I've been very involved in the community as first serving on municipal council in Napanee Township shortly after I moved back to the area in 1994. And while I was on council, Waste Management, the world's largest waste company, had approached council to say that they wanted to build a massive mega dump in a neighboring community on fractured limestone. And so myself and the reeve of the day, Margaret Walsh, looked at each other and said, you want to do what on fractured limestone? And when everybody in this area relies on well water. So Margaret and I founded an organization that then went on to fight, that's continuing that fight to this very day. I led off and on that fight. And we have been successful. We have been the only community that has ever successfully stopped Waste Management from building a landfill in a community in which they decided they wanted to do it. They're not very happy with us, but we are a very strong community that comes together in times like this. When we know when something is wrong and shouldn't go ahead, people stand up, and we were able to bring hundreds of volunteers together to be able to fight this fight. And I led that fight up until 2015 when I became the Member of Parliament. I've since then and before also advised a lot of other community organizations on organizing and fighting these types of fights, these environmental fights against massive corporations that want to do things. And it's not that I'm against the development, it's how you do it and where you do it that is vitally important. I mean, Waste Management site went on to contaminate the wells of 6 residences that were near and around that landfill that were hidden, that nobody uncovered. And we took them to the Environmental Review Tribunal and forced them to provide that data. I also coached basketball for my kids and others for 12 years in the community. I also got very close with the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte in my travels with the Chief, Donald Miracle, and with Dr. Marlene Brandt-Castellano. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Shelby Cramp-Nyman, please.
Thanks for the question. Ladies and gentlemen, I started in grade 8 when I was public school president. High school, I was co-president with a good friend, Matt McCoy. Then I served 15 years municipal council in the municipality of Centre Hastings, 3 terms as councillor, and 1 term as deputy mayor. That certainly taught me to give myself a backbone. I had to speak up for myself. I had to learn to listen. I was able to work with members of the behind the scenes, the bureaucrats, levels of the provincial government, the federal government, when we were seeking additional monies for infrastructure, for our playgrounds. I worked towards getting clear bags for our municipality to help reduce the garbage. I've been involved with Children's Foundation. I've been on that chair organizing golf tournaments for the last several years. Most importantly, preparing myself to be a member of Parliament and the contributions I've made to Hastings, Lennox and Addington. I've been raising a small family here. I've been paying a mortgage here. I've been attending hockey games, sports activities, golf, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the small business I was raised in. It gave back to the community continuously, and it taught me the value of a work ethic and community spirit and the spirit of being entrepreneurial. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby. Our next question comes from the local Federation of Agriculture. In their opinion, the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed a serious weakness in our food system, with meat processing being concentrated to a few extremely large processors across the country. They feel that part of what led to that concentration were policies seeking to provide food, health, and safety, resulting in excessive red tape, strict regulations, and heavy-handed bureaucracy, which then led to a steady decline in small local processors. Candidates, where does your party stand on policies which would support a return to local or regional processing? And we'll start with Reg Wilson, please.
I think I might have said that I was a small-time farmer at one time. Before I got into the Supreme Action Committee, I was what I would call a mixed farmer. We had initially 100 acres and about another 100, and then rented another 100, and raised sheep and beef cattle and pork before we got into cream. So agricultural is pretty much the key interest for me, always has been. It's what got me into that, attempt to get into that business in the first place. And part of what I think it's important for us in terms of dealing with the climate, because I'm not going to divert the big issue in the horn, the big elephant in the room is the climate. And one of the things we need to do is to try and find ways to eliminate or reduce the transportation effect, carbon cost of transportation of food. And the Green Party is committed to trying to develop focuses on kind of a grow local and small enterprise, because small enterprise results from small local shops and what have you, as this question is related to. So I can say specifically that the Green Party and I both would be very active in trying to develop and encourage more local production and more local food, because actually food security could become a big issue in a climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Reg. James Babcock, People's Party.
Okay, so I think it probably goes back to the eliminating the corporate handout for the big business. It discriminates against the little guy. So in this case, it'd be the smaller farmers. So that would help. I honestly don't know a lot about farming. Last time I was in this room at a PPC rally, there was a bunch of farmers that stood up and they were speaking out against the supply management side of Maxime's policy. And I have to say I agree with them. They made some very good points, and those are the ones you have to speak to, not somebody in Ottawa. So you have to essentially talk to the people that are doing it and see what the best course of action is. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably good enough for now. Gotta go to the source.
Thank you, James. Mike Bossio.
Yeah, this is a really tough issue. I know Queen's Meats, of course, local butcher and abattoir in the Yarker area that almost closed until Tara Enright and her husband had bought the Queen's Meats and have given it new life. But it's only because they're a producer, a beef producer, a very unique one, and it makes Enright Cattle Company is a fantastic. If you've never had their beef, it's really good beef. But they bought this because they were concerned they were going to lose a processor. The difficulty we have is that all of these small processors are provincially regulated, and the large ones are federally regulated. And the province started to move its regulations in tandem with the federal level. And I mean, I hate to say it, but I agree a bit with what you're saying there from the standpoint of the large corporations like to see the regulatory regime increase because it squeezes out the smaller producers. And it's unfortunate the province decided, and this goes back years ago. This is multiple governments that decided this. So there's no one government that was involved in this decision. But over the years, they've increased those regulations to be more and more in line with what's happening with the larger producers. And that has to change. That has to go back. There has to be a regulatory regime that exists for smaller producers because they don't have the resources in place, and they're also not moving the same number of animals through their processing facility. So they shouldn't have to operate like they have hundreds of thousands of animals going through the facility on a daily basis. So I would advocate that we talk to the province and try to get them to bring the regulatory regime back to what it was in a previous generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Shelby Cramp-Nyman, please.
The way I see this is that the biggest challenge is the lack of sufficient abattoirs. If we want to talk locally, we can talk about here in Odessa, the Thorpe family that is building the local abattoir, or trying to build the abattoir to be successful. What's happening is it's large enough to be federally regulated, and we're getting caught up in the bureaucratic nonsense. Right now, there's a 2-year backlog to process animals. There's no reason for this. The biggest challenge that we have is that we need to be able to work and have that communication. Too many people want to talk. Sadly, not enough people are listening. Get the facts, get the details, talk to the people that need to be spoken to, have the relationships with the municipalities, with the individual key stakeholders, with the province, and with the federal government. That's how things get done. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby. Jennifer Sloan, please.
So this is not a topic that I'm an expert on, but what I would say is my colleagues have all talked about something that I think is really important. I don't think that there's one true right answer. I think that if we talk to the experts, then they can tell us how to, their solutions, and we come to something that's reasonable that helps everybody. In terms of my observations, going to the grocery store, I'm wondering why I'm picking up raspberries that come from a different country when we grow them here, you know, and I know that there's certain things that are seasonal and there's times of the year that we won't produce it, and I get all of that. But there's certain things that I question and think, I don't understand why we are importing these things. We have farms that produce this right now. And so I don't know if the answer is restricting certain imports. I wouldn't know the process of how to go about that. But I think we need to start supporting local farmers and somehow get the big businesses and the big grocery stores to purchase local. I don't know how I would do that, but I would look into it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. And now on to our next question. Many in rural Hastings, Lennox and Addington still struggle with internet issues. So for the candidates, how will you ensure voters that the new upgraded services that were recently promised will offer varied pricing options and will not be monopolized by large carriers? And we'll start with James Babcock.
Okay, so this one hits close to home because my internet sucks. So, seen some nods, so that's good. Not alone anyway. But yeah, so there's been a program in place for a while now trying to get rural internet out to everybody. I think we might have actually been involved in that. So there you go. Somebody right in the room we can look at. So I'm hoping that it's coming soon. Again, I don't know where or how far along they are in the process of actually getting everything done. I do work, like I am an electrician, so I do have a bit of knowledge about how you would go about doing that. I'm not familiar with what stage the project's at or anything like that. I just know the reality is that mine's still not good, so we have room to go. So I guess if elected, I'd be looking into that as well, seeing what we can do to maybe speed that up a little bit. I do think in the future, internet out in the country is going to be very important as everything goes online and everything gets more and more bandwidth requirements and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully, if all goes well, we'll our internet won't suck in the future. So, thanks.
Thanks, James. Mike Bossio.
Yeah, this is an issue that I was focused on very early on. It's the reason I became the Rural Caucus Chair as soon as I was elected as MP. So that in the very first budget, we got record investments of $500 million into broadband connectivity. I knew that wasn't going to be remotely enough, but I knew that it would prove the case of the need for rural connectivity and how big it was. And we got billions of dollars worth of asks in that $500 million fund. And as a result of that, we now have $3.25 billion being invested into rural connectivity. As the MP, I was able to get a $42 million investment into our riding, and particularly in the south end of the riding, where they're laying 500 kilometers of fiber and 50 to 100 towers all over the southern part of the riding. The difficulty was that was announced, as you had indicated, that was announced a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, it took 2 years for the company to negotiate with Hydro One access to their hydro poles. 2 years. And so after I finished being the MP, after I lost last time, I became a senior rural advisor to Minister Monsef, and my job was the Universal Broadband Fund. How do we get it out there? How do we get it out more quickly? And had numerous conversations with Hydro One to say, look guys, you've got to do something here. And they were like, well, you know, we're not an internet company. And I said, well, you're gonna end up, forcing government's hand to have, CRTC step in on passive infrastructure, because passive infrastructure is the biggest barrier today to being able to get internet built in our rural communities. But it is happening. Thankfully, shovels in the ground. It will be built. Hastings portion will be built this year. LNA will be built, will be completed next year. And all Canadians will be connected by 2025 to 50 megs down and 10 megs up. And so
Thanks,
that's as a result of the work of this government. Thank you.
Thank you. Shelby Cramp-Nyman, please.
I think I can certainly start by saying that these are complex issues, and there's a number of factors that need to be considered. From a riding perspective, the first priority is get into the game and do what we need to do to get access. And once that has been done, we can face the other issues of consumer costs, wholesale broadband prices, and a growing lack of competition. Just commenting on what Mr. Bossio suggests, I think I would like to say, let's put politics aside. Let's have facts as they are. In 2015, the project was seeking additional money for phase 2 development that was started back in 2010. But progress was stalled as it received little support from the federal Liberals. Understanding the urgency of the situation for rural residents, the Ontario Conservative government was ready to fund the project alone. At the last minute, March 2021, the Liberals announced, with great fanfare, their parts of the overall funding package, coincidentally just in time for the election. It should be pointed out that the Liberal government is proposing a strategy that will pay out about $3.25 billion nationally. For its part, the Ontario government has announced $4 billion in spending just for Ontario residents. Bringing broadband internet access to rural communities is critical to our future. The project has been and will continue to be a team effort and supported by all levels of government, all political parties, not just one, and interested private stakeholders. Turning it into an election issue, another wedge example, where one party has done everything while the others have done little or nothing, is inaccurate. And it doesn't serve the best interests of the riding or its voters. We need to work together, all of the parties. Take the partisan hats off, be a team. The most effective work is done at the committee levels when it's not political. Why? Because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Shelby. Jennifer Sloan, please.
In terms of getting us adequate internet, it is a complex issue. I agree with my colleague. We've all had issues here and there, especially with the pandemic, and homeschooling kindergartners is not easy when you have to watch a video, download the activity, explain it to your child, then do a video, do the activity, and upload that, and do that for times 3 kids. One activity would probably take about 2 hours. So I understand how difficult it is to do our day-to-day. Again, I think it kind of goes back to the lockdowns. If we were able to go out and perform as we normally would, our day-to-day, we wouldn't have this strain on our internet. But with that said, we may or may not go into another lockdown, and we definitely will feel the pinch on our internet, and we need to take action. So I think that we definitely should work as a team, not start from scratch, but look at the policies that have been proposed in the past and focus on the things that will make a difference right now. I, as an independent, would advocate for that direct funding to go to our internet. And as some of you may know, with my husband being an independent, he talked a lot, almost weekly, in Ottawa. And I will be a thorn in everyone's side in terms of if my constituents want that, that's what I'm going to be talking about all the time. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Reg Wilson, please.
My internet sucks too. If I want to do anything to do with banking, and it's going to have to link to somebody else, I have to wait until sometime after 10 o'clock. We're satellite based, and the performance is dismal. But the Green Party, as you can tell, I'm going to support this. The Green Party is also keenly interested in making sure we get rural internet going, and I think that's very important to this riding, because a lot of people now are working from home with good, high-paying jobs. And so if we can provide them the facilities to be able to do that kind of work in the more rural areas of our riding, then we're going to bring economic activity to home. And I also think it's going to be helpful in terms from a carbon point of view, because the more people can work from home, the less we're going to be driving back and forth to work. And I think that's also another big proponent for why we should proceed with a strong rural internet service. Because we have lots of big towers in downtown Toronto that could maybe be converted into homes if they can't be into offices, and that would alleviate a part of our housing problem. Anyway, that's our position. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. On to our next question. Many small businesses in Hastings, Lennox and Addington are struggling to find employees. Candidates, what do you feel are the reasons for this problem, and how will your party get workers back into those jobs? And we'll start with Mike Bossio, please.
First, I want to correct some of the information that was just shared by Ms. Cramp-Newman. For someone who didn't want to make broadband partisan, she certainly did a very good job of heading in that direction. You know, she's got the history in projects confused. The history of the 2010 project was the EORN project that was to bring internet to Eastern Ontario at 1 megabit per second. It was, at that time, that was where we wanted to go, because there was no streaming and all the rest of it, so it was suitable, and that was completed in 2014. The project that I was talking about was under the Universal Broadband Fund. The other project she was talking about, as far as the province and the feds getting together, was the $71 million, 71 million from the province, 71 million from the feds, 71 million from the municipalities and others, called the Cell Gap Project. It's a cell project, not a broadband project, for all of Eastern Ontario, which is a great project, and I'm very happy to see that it's going, but it is another EORN project. 2 separate projects, 2 separate timelines, and 2 separate governments that were involved in that process. So I just want to clear that up. Now, on small businesses employees, I mean, this is a complex issue, especially with COVID, because you've actually got, they're saying that up to 30% of Canadians have switched jobs, switched careers over this last 18 months. I know myself and my son went from being a cook in a kitchen to now being a programmer analyst. This is happening on an ongoing basis, and it's leading to a great difficulty. Our government is investing $7 billion in a skill development and training program to train 500,000 Canadians on the skills that we need in our industries today, in our small businesses today. The other problem we have is that a lot of seniors that were off over COVID that used to work part-time that decided, oh, you know what, actually I like being home now. I don't think I want to go back and take the chance on getting COVID. So we've lost a big chunk of our workforce. We need to bring the Canada, the child care program, the $10 a day child care program will assist in that and getting more people into the workforce.
Thank you, Mike. Shelby Cramp-Nyman, please.
Thank you. Over the last several weeks, we've been hearing a lot at the doors. I've been hearing a lot about jobs, the economy, the environment, the deficit, healthcare, employees, as per the question. The plan that Erin O'Toole has brought forward with Secure the Future has several facets to it. One of the facets is secure jobs. How do we do that? Recover the 1 million jobs lost during the pandemic within 1 year. Talk is cheap. Actions will speak significantly louder than words. He vows to that. Second, take immediate action to help the hardest hit sectors who have suffered the most. And there's a tremendous amount of them. This is a tough time. Also, rebuilding Main Street by assisting businesses and providing incentives to invest in and start new businesses. Too many Canadians are receiving benefits. It was important. We went through a lot of tough times, but we need to scale back the benefits. We need to slowly start back the economy up. We need to get the robust economy that Canadians are accustomed to. We need to be proud to walk down the street and be able to walk into a business and say hello. We need to get Canadians, we need to get employees back to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby. Jennifer Sloan, please. Sure, as soon as I put my glasses on. Many small businesses in Hastings, Lennox and Addington are struggling to find employees. What do you feel are the reasons for this problem, and how will your party get workers back into those jobs?
Well, one of my very close friends has been going through this as well. He can't find anyone to work in his restaurant. So I do agree with Shelby about the CERB being a big part of the problem. I think it did help people initially for the last couple of months for sure, because if the businesses were shut down, then they had no other options. But now, a lot of people are used to getting the money, and our government is enabling that. And I don't think that is something that can prosper our country, certainly not our riding. I think that the CERB needs to be eased back. I wouldn't snap it back, because I think there's a lot of people that would suffer some consequences to that. But I think inherently people want to work. They want to do what they love, and whether it's owning a business themselves or working in a company that they absolutely love. And so I would work directly with the small businesses to somehow incentivize the employees to give them money to get back into the workforce instead of incentivizing the employers. So I would try to pass on the money to the employees directly so they could feel good about getting up and going to work every day. I also think we need a lot more manufacturing jobs, and we need to incentivize trades from local schools in order to get students in who live locally, so then once they graduate, they can start working here, and that will enable more housing.
Thank you, Jennifer. Reg Wilson, please.
One of the things I did in looking at how I was going to campaign in this riding was I took a look at the electoral results from previous years, and one of the interesting stats that came out in front of me was that the average income of people in our riding is $27,000 a year. Seems like a reasonable amount of money, but in real life, that's just a little bit less than minimum wage. So I think if you're a person who's on CERB and probably making more, perhaps, than you made when you're working, then that's a bit of a disincentive to go back to the job. So I don't think there is an easy, fast, quick way to get out of this. As a humanitarian effort, I think the government did the right thing to provide something for those people to keep them alive, keep their families fed, keep the heat on. But I think now that we're starting to gradually sneak out of the COVID crisis, I think we need to gradually start to cut back on that CERB so there is an incentive for people to go back to work. Having done that, the next thing we need to do is to get strategies to get business into our community that pays better than minimum wage, because we cannot have a good, healthy economy struggling around on a $27,000 a year average income. You need to do better than that. We need to do better than that. And if we drive the technology that's going to solve the climate crisis problems and find ways to keep that technology manufactured in Canada, and particularly in this community, as I've seen it done in others, then we will be much better off. So we need to be aggressive in how we respond to climate change, because that's the opportunity for the 21st century economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. James Babcock, please.
Well, I think everybody's covered about what I was going to say, so great minds think alike. But yeah, the biggest thing is $2,000 a month versus a part-time job where you'd maybe make $1,000 a month or less, or maybe a little more, but less than $2,000. So $2,000 for staying at home, that seems like a no-brainer, just on the numbers, right? So when the CERB eases back, that's when you're going to see people out looking for jobs again. So I think that'll kind of start to fulfill itself. I do think that it'd be smart to start investing in manufacturing coming back to Canada, because a lot of it has gone overseas. And again, with the green aspect, it's smarter to make it here and use it here rather than ship it all that way. I heard years ago they were cutting hardwood in Canada, shipping it to China, they'd lacquer it and then send it back. It seems kind of inefficient to me, but that was one thing that happened, I guess. So anything we can do to increase efficiency and anything we can do to produce things ourselves, we shouldn't really be relying on anyone else. We have all the natural resources we need in Canada. So that should be a shoe-in for us increasing our manufacturing, especially with robotics and stuff. It doesn't employ quite as many as a traditional manufacturing facility, but it still employs some and takes the jobs out of China, right? So again, back to the question, I think as soon as the CERB eases back, people will be back out there looking for work, looking for jobs, and so on. Thanks.
Thank you, James. I have no idea of the time. I'm hoping we have time for one more question, Megan. We're good? Okay. Next question. What will your party do to create more affordable housing in Hastings, Lennox and Addington? And we'll start with Shelby Krant-Nyman. Please.
Affordable housing is something very significant, and you see it even more when you're going across the riding, talking to so many different walks of life. The Conservative Party has several different factors in their plan, and I'm happy to share some of them. With regards to the extensive real estate portfolio that the federal government currently has, the federal government is currently the largest property owner in the country, with over 37,000 buildings, and the plan is to release at least 50% of those for housing. Something something else, we'd like to provide more Canadians with a path to home ownership by making it easier for more families to get a mortgage. We'd like to ban foreign investors from buying homes here if they're not planning to live here. On that note, we can still encourage foreign ownership, but in an affordable, purpose-built rental housing for Canadians. There's so many different factors to this, and 2 minutes, sadly, I think would really be difficult to get all the points across with a lot of the questions tonight, so I'd certainly be happy to answer this offline to give more detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelby. Jennifer Sloan, please.
So I'm talking to people when I'm out door knocking or just at events. This is something that is at the heart of many people, actually. I guess maybe about 6 o'clock this evening, I was just door knocking before the event, and I came across a woman who said that I asked her what her most important issue is for this election. And she said that she is 65 years old. She gets $900 and change a month from the government. Her rent is about $800 a month. And she's on a wait list for 2 years for an apartment, the only apartment in Napanee that is geared to income for seniors. So this is a big problem. And actually, last year, I tried to get my mom, who is a senior, to come and live closer to me. And she lives in Toronto. And I could not find her a place. There was either no vacancies, or the cheapest that I saw, what that was a good place to live, was $1,800 for a studio apartment. This is unacceptable, especially for our seniors. I had spoken with an individual who was in between homes up in Bancroft, and he said that there's actually a lot of public buildings, public schools that could be turned into some shelters or affordable housing. I also, in my last answer that I gave, I was starting to talk about incentivizing the trades. And so I would speak with the local school, the local nearby trade schools, to put grants in place for students who live locally already, not somebody just flying in. And when they graduate, they will start working in the field, and that would be very helpful in terms of building homes and getting people places to live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Reg Wilson, please.
This is a tough one, and it's actually become tougher in our community in the last year and a half than it was before, because typically, I think if people thought about affordable housing, they were typically thinking of people who, you know, maybe had a very, very limited income and they needed help to find a basic place to live. But I think the exodus from Toronto, people in the city trying to take their $1.3 million rent bungalow and get out and live in the country where it's clean air and it's fresh, has caused a tremendous bubble in the pricing of homes in our community. We moved here 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago now. We bought a home that admittedly needed a bit of work, but it was less than $300,000. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find a home in this community now that's going to be less than $5 million. And if our income stays at $27,000 a year on average, that tells you the same thing that I've heard from a couple of people, because I have a little handyman business. I didn't say that, but I'm a small businessman myself. And I was building a deck for a young fellow on Vardy Lake, and he made the observation that he has lived in this community, and his friends have lived in the Prince Edward County community all their lives, and suddenly they can no longer afford to buy a home in the community they live in because of that bubble. So I think the housing problem has become more localized than we realize for both first-time buyers as well as for people who are struggling to find an adequate income. Personally, I think the incentives to modify buildings to make sure they're more useful is a good one. I also think, frankly, though I'm not so sure how easy that would be to do in this community, this is my personal opinion, by the way, it'd be nice to have the municipality, when they're issuing building permits to do subdivisions, to say, hey, a certain percentage of the money you're going to spend in a subdivision, I'm running out of time. A percentage of what you're prepared to spend for single-family homes also has to be spent for for something that's affordable homes. It could be a municipal activity that's supported by the federal party. Thank you.
Thank you, Reg. James Babcock, please.
Okay, so I kind of echo him again. So affordable housing used to be those with the least amount of income coming in, and so that they had a reasonable spot to live. Nowadays, it seems to be everybody just trying to either qualify or get a house to live in. I've heard a lot of stories where houses in our area or even Kingston, they're going for over asking and by like $100,000, which is unheard of for this area. So what we've got going on is a little bit of an inflation scenario. So there's a bit of inflation going on, and that's partially from governments printing money and partially from immigration. So I think it was since, I should have wrote it down, but in the last, I don't know, five or 10 years, maybe less than that, we've brought about 2 million people into this country. So with a little bit of inflation and with increased demand, you're going to get upward pressure in housing prices. So it's kind of to be expected. I know a lot of us didn't see it coming, but that's what we have. So I guess the best plan for this is normally to combat inflation, you would raise interest rates, but we know that a lot of the guys that have bought a $6 or $7 or $8 or $900,000 house lately, if you raise that a point, they're going to lose the house, and that would just be a cascading effect. So we've got to, I think, lock in the interest rate for whatever they started at, and then slowly raise it over time, and that will help, and also slowing down immigration to a reasonable level that will ease the pressure a little bit. Thanks.
Thanks, James. Mike Bossio, please.
Thank you. So there's two different issues. Actually, first I'd like to say the CERB was scaled back in July, in case nobody realized that, and it will be fully ended at the end of September, depending, of course, what happens here with COVID. Now, there's two different issues here that we're talking about. One is housing affordability, and the other is affordable housing. They're totally different issues. You're asking about affordable housing, so I'll address that issue, and I would really direct anyone to our platform, because we have a very comprehensive plan around housing affordability that I think people would be interested in. As far as affordable housing, our government is investing $65 billion to build affordable housing. In our riding, I held 6 different workshops to try to entice organizations and developers to build affordable housing. Unfortunately, there just weren't that many that were interested. And the big problem is that they can build as many single-family dwellings as possible until the cows come home and sell every single one of them just fine. So why should I, as a business person, why should I build affordable housing? And so it's a really complex issue. Now, thankfully, we do have a number of units that are going into Laurel, that have been built to Coe Hill, that have been built in Bancroft, and there's just been another announcement of a community hub that's been funded that's going to have 3 stories of affordable housing above it. And there are a number of other projects. Actually, Bancroft has a number of projects right now that will be happening around affordable housing. The mayor there has been very, very focused on this issue, as has the mayor here in Napanee. It's once again, the funds are there. The co-investment fund has been doubled and will be permanently doubled moving forward, the co-partnership fund with CMHC. So I hope that developers out there would consider to build a more affordable housing for our communities, because we are desperate to get there. Now, as far as achieved, the mic's cutting out, we've achieved 50% reduction in our poverty levels.
Oh, your time's up anyway, Mike, sorry. Good way to try to distract me. Good try. You did. Yes, and you can use my mic for the extras here if we need to. That does conclude our submitted questions. I feel like everybody's had a chance on the last one. Thank you. And now each candidate will be given a few minutes to make a closing statement. Originally it was going to only be a couple of minutes, but we did great time here tonight. So each of you will be allotted, if you can use them, 4 minutes for your closing statements. And for those, we will work in reverse alphabetical order, just to keep me even more confused. So I will ask Reg Wilson with the Green Party of Canada to begin. Reg, you'll have 4 minutes for your closing for the Green Party. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Well, you've probably noticed I've had a hard time keeping it to 3 minutes, so I'm going to have a tougher time keeping it to 4, I'm sure, because I haven't covered half of what I want to say. But I think, as I started to say, there is an elephant in the room, and it is the climate, and it is a threat to humanity, and it's a threat to the children and our grandchildren, the people that are not in this room, and we are the responsible adults, and we have to deal with that. And the Green Party is committed to the 60% reduction that the international scientific community has recommended. International scientific community is a key part of this, because I want to make sure you understand that these are scientists from around the world who are not biased to a particular industry, a particular political party, or a particular country. They're basically saying we have to get 60% reduction, and we have to get it by 2030. And the Green Party is the only party that's committed to doing that. And it sounds scary, and I have to admit it is. But there's a man in 1962 said, you know what, we're going to do this not because it's easy, but it's hard. And I'll tell you who that man was. That was John F. Kennedy, and he said, the United States, we're going to put a man on the moon, and we're going to do it in 10 years. And we're going to make bigger rockets. And he said that because that's the only thing he knew for sure that they would have to do. But they did it. Nobody in the United States believed it could be done, but they did it. And they learned an awful lot in the process of doing that. They developed new technology, new materials, and became a world leader in that science. And that's the challenge in front of us. Because for sure, the economy is going to change, and our climate is going to change, and the world is going to change or not. And the only option we have is it changes. If Canada is aggressive in its targets, which the Green Party is saying we are, then we're going to start. We're going to start with what we know, and we're going to learn as we go, just like the United States did. And we're going to develop new technologies. We're going to start with carbon sequestration and agricultural practices that reduce our carbon or increase our sequestration in carbon. We're going to come up with cleaner technologies in manufacturing. We're going to do electric cars. We're going to do the solar panels. We're going to do all the stuff that everybody talks about. And then when we've got that done, we're going to discover that it's like in business. You're a businessman. Businessmen know. Everybody knows. If you start talking to different people about the issues you have, and you're in a meeting with a bunch of people who are somewhat related in terms of what you do, somebody's going to come forward and say, hey, if you incorporate, I think I can help you with that. And the next thing you know, you've got something else that's going. Canada can become, if we're aggressive, if we're dragged by the heels, we won't be there. But if we're aggressive in tackling the problem, and we're the first company or the first country to develop the technology that's going to solve the problem, and if we're smart, as the Green Party is suggesting, by making sure we keep that intellectual property in our hands and don't ship it to the United States to be manufactured, then the economy for the 21st century, which is a big part of what it takes to grow as far as the Chamber of Commerce is concerned, the biggest part of the 21st century economy will be ours. So we will have done two things. We will have solved the climate crisis. We will provide housing or a livable environment for our children and our grandchildren, and we will become the industry leaders in that technology. That is the challenge we have. That's what we have to do. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to go to the moon. Thank you.
Thanks, Reg. Jennifer Sloan, Independent, please.
So we've heard some interesting things from our candidates, and I'm sure all of us have an important part for the issues that we're focusing on. As I've mentioned before, me being a nurse practitioner, I've been a RN first and then a nurse practitioner, and the total of that has been 11 years. I'm used to talking to a lot of different people, coming into my office, and we need to come up with a solution that works. So I'm used to talking to people that maybe I don't agree with, whatever. I'm going to talk to you like a human, and I'm going to help you with your problems. That's what I do. I've always had a heart for the people, and I started off this campaign with a couple of ideas in mind of what I thought the issues were. But, you know, when I started talking to people, hitting the ground and talking to people, it came to light a lot of things that I hadn't considered. So I think it's really important to have that open communication And speaking on communication, as an independent, I won't have to toe any party line, okay? If I speak to you guys and you guys tell me something, then that's your voice going straight to Ottawa. It's not coming the other way around. I think we have a lot of problems with that, with politics these days, and a lot of MPs are getting tossed out of their parties, or MPPs getting tossed out of their parties because they won't toe the line. I think that's wrong, and what I will do is speak for you guys. I don't have to ask somebody what I should stick up for. And as an independent, I get to speak a lot more in the House of Commons than anyone else. Thank you so much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the way I see it, this election was called on a day that cattle fell, and also overlapped with another grim foreign policy milestone of the two Michaels, 1,000 days since the two Canadians were detained by the Chinese Communist Party. Canada is now in an election that we didn't want. While we were taking summer holidays, harvesting your crop in a tough year, or trying to get your business back on its feet, there was a grab for power to try and win back a coveted majority. Bad behavior should not be rewarded. This election is about who can do the best job working towards a more self-reliant and resilient Hastings, Lennox and Addington. To do that, we need to establish critical cell phone and broadband internet infrastructure, as we spoke about earlier. We need to rebuild Main Street, as discussed earlier tonight's debate. We cannot afford to do anything in this riding unless we secure well-paying jobs and allow people to afford the cost of living and buy or rent a home. To do this, we need to support small business as they recover. Small and medium-sized businesses have been hit hard during this pandemic, and they need our help as a community if we are to succeed. Why? Because they employ at least 70% of the Canadian workforce and create 85% of all new jobs. This is why Conservatives have a plan to rebuild Main Street. Conservatives will work hard towards increasing the availability of affordable housing, especially rental units. We need to improve health and long-term care outcomes by working with the provinces and the municipalities. We need to provide clarity and resources for marijuana grow-op regulations and enforcement. Conservatives have a plan to move forward past this pandemic, and it is not simply a plan just on spending money quickly. This election is how we get Canada back on its feet and we rebuild our economy, our jobs, and their way of life. And lastly, I'll just note, thank you for your patience. I used to have a speech impediment when I was younger, and a couple of the words tonight caught me. But as we can see, I've gotten over the speech impediment, but not 100%. I'll close out tonight with thanking all of you for coming and respectfully asking for your support.
Aaron O'Toole wants you to believe that he has a plan to secure our future. Well, let's start with the planet's future. His plan would have you burn more carbon so you can earn points and roll back our ambitious climate targets. How about protecting or securing women's place in the workplace through child care spaces? And his plan would give money to families, the parents that can already afford child care, but make it almost impossible for low-income families to access his tax credits, and his plan won't create one single new child care space. Or maybe you were thinking his plan would protect us as we finish the fight against COVID. His plan, poll after poll has shown that Canadians support mandatory vaccines and a vaccine passport. His plan is to hope that Canadians get vaccinated and leave passports to the provinces. Well, hope is not a strategy, and leaving it to the provinces isn't leadership in the face of a global pandemic. And as for a plan to make healthcare more secure for Canadians, his plan would introduce innovation into the healthcare system. That's code for more privatization and easier access for wealthy Canadians. Let us remember that we have had a Conservative representative in this riding, and we know what that looks like. And we know what it has taught us about the importance of local representation. As MP, every day I worked across party lines, whether it was NDP, Conservative, Green, in Parliament, here in the riding. I saw legislation through a community-first lens and the impact that it had on us here locally. And the differences that those investments make in the day-to-day lives of people that live in this riding. And that's why I'm running again to be your MP. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a hard-working, straight-talking MP that got stuff done. Didn't matter whether you were an individual, business, organization, municipality, party affiliation, or demographic. If you called me with a problem, I answered that call, and I wouldn't rest until I got it done. Because to me, there is no greater feeling than when you know you're making a difference in people's lives, and you can do that in this job. And that's why I'm running once again to be your MP. With me, there is no second guessing. You know exactly what you're going to get as an MP. So I ask you on September 20th to bring back Bossio. Thank you.
I'd like to touch on the lockdown just for a second here. So if we end up going into another lockdown, I think that'll be a huge mistake. This is going to be our fourth go-around at these waves. Sweden hasn't locked down at all, and they haven't had any worse a wave than we have. So that's just one thing I'd like to get out of the way right before I start this. So, all right, there's 2 points I'd like to touch on in closing. I'll dive right in since time is limited. The first is the importance of paying back our national debt. I also think that some of the programs and ideas being put forth by other parties sound awesome, but I'd ask each of you to think critically about how these things will be paid for, and by whom, before throwing your support behind them. They aren't telling us, but by the way I see it, there are 3 possibilities. The least likely would be an immediate increase in our taxes to cover these expenses. They want to buy your votes with pretty promises, so they aren't going to tell us exactly what they cost up front. So really, there are 2 possibilities. One sees the government to continue to print billions of dollars, leading to a hyperinflationary scenario where even the richest residents can barely afford to get by. This is the path I think we are on. It's the most obvious in the housing sector, where prices have skyrocketed in the last 2 years, but it can be seen in almost all industries. The problem is that wages never increase at the same rate, so the average person finds themselves less able to afford things that they would normally buy day to day. This is what happened in Venezuela. In May, the minimum wage per month in Venezuela was raised from 1.8 million bolivars to 7 million bolivars. Some citizens also received some extra funds in the form of food bonus. Altogether, this allows a minimum wage earner to buy a kilogram of cheese and a liter of milk for the month. Just let that sink in. Don't want to go down that road, do you? Neither do I. The other possibility is that our expenses become the next generation's problem. According to the data published by the Parliamentary Budget Officer, if current policies are not adjusted, the federal government will only balance the budget again in the year 27. A baby born this year owes more than $26,000 in federal debt. By the time the budget is balanced 50 years from now, newborns will be on the hook for about $67,000. That is not the kind of legacy I want to leave behind. We don't have to follow either of those paths if the People's Party of Canada wins the election. We have a plan to balance the budget and even reduce taxes within one elected term. This is in contrast to the Conservative plan, which will take 10 years and winning at least 3 elections to accomplish. The others have no plan at all. So my second point is connected to democracy. The NDP, Conservatives, and Liberals all have whip votes. This means that their MPs must vote in
Thank you, James, and thank you everyone tonight. We'd like to thank the Napanee District Chamber of Commerce Subcommittee and the Napanee Lions Club for making tonight's event possible. Thank you, of course, to each of our candidates who made themselves available tonight. And of course, thank you to you, the all-important voters, who submitted questions, who attended in person, those who watched and will be watching online on Cogeco Cable's Your TV as well. Thank you so much. Please be sure to social distance on your way out and wear your masks, and thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.